give an overview now of the compression BNC connector that's available on the tvtrade.ie website. It would be used with the following, which is the compression BNC tool. Okay, this tool, there's a separate overview video on this. It can be used for both BNCs and indeed also with F connectors. But this particular connector proves extremely popular with professional CCTV installers, simply because it's easy to put on, it's flexible in terms of what cables we can use it with, and also it gives an extremely tight fit onto the cable. So maybe to give an overview of how good this is, let's just look at what the competitor products would be. So the two traditional ways of putting on BNCs up to this point would be something like this crimp connector here, which we can see comes in 3 points, where we strip down the cable, we slip the pin on, we put the barrel on, we put it on, and then we crimp it down afterwards, okay? It works reasonably well. It's a little bit laborious putting it on, and there's a lot of ways of doing it wrong, okay? So it's very widely used, but there's a lot of frustration factor with it. An alternative to this would be something like this, which is a twist-on BNC connector. So you can see if you just look inside, it's threaded on the inside, and what happens is we simply pare down the cable, twist it on. So it's easier to put on. The disadvantage with it, of course, is that twist connections by definition will never be as good as either a crimp or a compression. So compression connectors give by some distance the firmest contact with the cable, and on top of that then as well, this one is actually extremely easy to put on. So let's just look at the profile of the connector itself. So what we have here is we have the front profile, the side profile, and the back profile of it. So basically the cable is inserted from here, we put the pin onto the end of the cable, and then what we do is this is the BNC connection here on the far end, okay? So what we'll do at this point is I'm just showing that most will say the BNC connectors that I showed initially as the sort of alternatives to this, they would be used primarily purely with RG59 cable, but this connector here is flexible in terms of we've successfully tested it with both RG6 and also RG59. RG6 would be the predominant cable used in the television industry, RG59 is the main cable used inside the CCTV industry. And if we just compare the cables side by side here, they look relatively identical. There's a slight difference in diameter, but the primary difference is that the center cable in an RG6 cable is quite a bit thicker than in an RG59 cable, and if you have a pin that's exactly sized for RG59, it can make it just a little bit tricky to get on the pin, or indeed impossible with certain cables. So I'll give an overview of actually installing this now, and I'm going to use the example of for this example I'm going to use the RG59 cable. So what I'm going to do here first of all is I've pared down this cable already, and what you can see here that we have an extra distance of, I'll just use this end here actually to work out a little bit neater. What we have here is we have the core wire exposed here, and I'm simply going to slide the pin on here. So when this slides on, it should cover the entire section of the core and almost touch the dielectric here in the center, okay? So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually just going to slide this in here into the connector. So I'm just going to focus here for a second on this. Now if you wanted it at that point, you can actually use something like this pliers here just to crimp that slightly and hold it onto the cable firmly during the insertion process, but there's no real need to do that. I'm just going to twist this as we shove it on, and we can see here now that we have the pin coming up to the very top here, and the compression connector here is in the uncompressed state. So in that point here, if I just put a little bit of force here, I can just pull this connector back off. But what I'm going to use now is the compression tool. So the compression tool is quite clever in terms of there's changeable heads on this particular one, but what we want to do is when we're pushing this down, we want the force to go on the inside rather than the outside. We don't want to compress the actual outside of the casing, because that's what we use to lock in afterwards. We can't afford to deform that. But we want to put all the pressure onto the center. And this particular compression tool here puts pressure on the outside, or on the center part, and I'll push it down, and I'll just show you in a moment here. So I've actually just adjusted the height on this to suit it particularly for this size of connector here, and I'm just going to insert it into the tool here. Now there's a separate video for this tool, So if you're interested in it, it'll be covered in more detail. And what we're going to do here is, when I push that cable in, it just locks it in here. And you can see here that it's housed here. So we can see a sort of a push-up mechanism here. And we can see here it's going to start to compress. And as I push on more and more pressure, it compresses all the way up without actually deforming here. Okay, so it's compressed all the way. And if we actually saw this plastic here deforming, we know would have put too much pressure on. And once we've gone to the very end like this, only then will it release. And we can just pull the cable back out like that, okay? And if we come along here, we have a rock solid connection here. And if we came along here and we wanted to join this cable using a BNC joiner here, we can just slide it in here like this and twist. So you can see that there. So it's highly effective. It's far better than the alternatives on the market in terms of what the choices are. And I think this will be a huge success and a real godsend for people who are in the CCTV industry and want to get really good connections on their BNC cables.